You guys want to hear a thigh-slapping joke? Your penis size. You guys ready for another banger? Wait till you hear this thigh slapper. Wrestling boom, period. Now that you're undeniably laughing raucously on the floor, trying to hold in your guts for my Sarah Silverman-esque type of joke telling, I'm going to need you to get your punk ass up off the floor, put your pants leg on one arm at a time, sit back in your sneako cuck chair, and watch your worldview get destroyed quicker than when CPS took your mom away and informed you that that golden sweet nectar that you were drinking that made you feel funny inside, unfortunately, wasn't apple juice. Now I gotta let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. My deepest, darkest secret. I mean, darker than an African tribe going hunting at midnight. I mean, darker than a George Floyd joke. I'm gonna let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. I'm a millennial. I know, right? Truly heartbreaking. But there's a reason why I'm letting you know that I'm a millennial. I'm letting you know that I'm a millennial because I want to be able to let you guys know that, unfortunately, I can't necessarily relate to some of the younger people in the generation. I can't look at you guys and say to myself, wow, I see the world how you see the world. We see the world in a similar perspective. That's not true. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, I grew up in a generation of creativity and innovation. Well, maybe not so much creativity, but for sure innovation. And previous generations alike grew up in the same type of environment versus the majority of you people under 25 years old, mainly, maybe even 26 years old, grew up in a generation where pretty much everything was a remake from the last, taking away and remixing everything from the past because that's just how business nowadays, that's how conglomerates usually operate, right? Because they don't want to take the actual necessary path to actually be innovative, to actually be creative, to give you something sustainable that you can identify yourselves with in this generation. Which brings me to AEW Dynamite. Now, I'm not going to go out of my way to bash them unnecessarily or create any ad hominems because that's been played out since 2020. I mean, at the time when coronavirus is actually, not too much of a lie. I'm going to pretend that none of my videos existed in the past, and I'm going to try to be as straightforward as humanly possible without outright bashing AEW. And we're going to take it up with the WWE fan base in itself, because the whole wrestling boom period totally coincides with what we've been seeing AEW trying to perpetuate so their fans can have something to combat with. That's all it is in the end of the day. It comes right back to tribalism. And who does tribalism affect more than the actual company itself? It affects you and it affects me. Because all you do is give these companies the type of mindset to believe that what they're currently doing right now is the right thing, when in actuality, it's nowhere near the right thing. There was a time when AEW actually considered itself, really defined its own company as being a complete alternative from what WWE has been doing for the better part of around, at that point, 60 years now? Yeah, pretty much. It's been around 60, maybe 70 years. They thrive themselves as far as being an alternative, when in reality, they're just more of a premium version of the in-ring action. And you know what? Some premiums ain't always better than the actual original. When I think of originality, when I think of actually being an alternative, I think of actually doing something completely different from what the other wrestling company is doing. Not doing what the wrestling company is currently doing, just at a more effective and an efficient manner. And maybe I'm using the word effective a little bit loosely because, again, it depends on how you look at your in-ring action and what you value in your in-ring style. If you value the indie wrestling stuff, and more particular the high-flying hardcore stuff, then of course you're going to look at it more as a premier version in comparison to WWE when discussing AEW. But obviously, if that's not what you care for in your professional wrestling, then this is nothing more. You wouldn't even call it an alternative even. You would just call it nothing more than just a premium of the same thing that you already been seeing for the better part of 70 years. Now, I don't even have to dive into AEW's numbers. We've been seeing it lately, whether you're talking about Rampage, whether you've been talking about the fall of AEW, and this is coming after the whole war with WWE's NXT, when they were actually doing better viewership ratings, when they actually had somebody to chase them, if you will. Now they have nobody to chase them, now that they're still confidently supplanted right there in that number 2 spot that they could just comfortably thrive in. I mean, I just find it funny and hilarious that you had people who were siphoning numbers from you on that day, and you were still making better viewership, or you had a better viewership compared to what you have currently right now at the moment. That's just always really, really, I don't know. I don't want to say bugged because I don't feel like that's the appropriate word for it. but befuddled. Yeah, look at me using big motherfucking words. Befuddled. It befuddled me. It left me aghast, if you will, right? So then we jump into AEW, and you have to ask yourself, what have they been doing lately for them to have such a downturn compared to where they were when they had people actually siphoning their viewers right from underneath them, right? And I'll tell you what it is. Complacency. Complacency is what's currently killing professional wrestling as a whole, but in particular AEW. Now, what do I mean about complacency? You know what I mean. Don't play stupid. I'm not your father. Never will be, no matter what that birth certificate says. What I mean about complacency is the in-ring action, which is nothing wrong with their in-ring action. There's nothing wrong with having really, really good matches, but you have to save it for specific instances where it actually matters. To just go out there and just bastardize your in-ring work for absolutely nothing, it just makes the match that you're going to have to actually mean something a lot more meaningless when the match actually becomes too complacent, or and this is what I'm seeing with other superstars like Luchasaurus, for an example, it renders that match to be not so I don't want to say subpar, but I guess, yeah, subpar would probably be the best word. Not at the standard of where you would be at compared to the other matches. Like, for an example, you have a Luchasaurus going out there who's really, really big and super athletic. You can even talk about Brian Cage. You can even put in Warlow if you want to. Guys who are really, really big doing swantons and moonsaults and roundhouse kicks on regular television for absolutely nothing matches. And then you have the match at a pay-per-view or something like that, and it doesn't quite hit as well, because you pretty much blew all your load on one match that meant absolutely nothing on television. Now imagine doing that for 4 years. Eventually, again, complacency starts to rear its ugly head, and the complacency that's usually being garnered is something that's already stagnant, as is with the in-ring work. And when you rely on that for so long, it becomes super boring. Even the promos, the cursing, the swearing, again, not trying to be a stickler. I don't mind it. But when you just randomly pull it out for absolutely no reason whatsoever, it has no effect on the promo. All it does is just tell us that you have no talent and that you can't go out there and say words from the top of your head to progress a story that you're being paid 6 digits for in order to convey to the audience. And then you have the blood. John Moxley. Do I have to say even more? I won't even go too far into the blood. I can talk about the blood being like used or overused to the point that even companies like WWE, who don't bleed often, they suffer for it because of how many times you've bled, because you completely took that away in regards to another tool that could be helped in order to push that story forward, to make it different from just the stereotypical gymnastics or hardcore spots. It's an actual element that could be taken and used for a person who has a very heated feud in order to convey that story to that audience. And when you wrap that all up into one, you get AEW in 2023. People used to bitch and moan about Vince Russo consistently hot-shotting shit all the goddamn time, which, nothing wrong. I see where you're coming from in regards to that. But at least there was a different element. There wasn't just completely focusing on all of these things. There were skits in between. There were vignettes in between that actually promoted more than what you're currently seeing in this so-called variety show of professional wrestling styles. Because that's what it is. It's not a variety show overall. It's a variety show of wrestling styles. Stuff that we see already, okay? I don't need to see a 450 and now I have to see a shooting star press, and somehow that's supposed to make me want to tune into your show. It's not. If I want to watch gymnastic routines, guess what I'm going to do? Go on YouTube and watch some gymnastic routines. Not go on some wrestling show watching 2 gay guys wrestle in their underwear. That right there in itself ain't going to do it for me. Now, I'm willing to watch these 2 gay guys wrestle in their underwear if they give me a reason to. Pause. Actually, unpause. That's not a pause moment. Yes, it is. Pause. Continuing on, though. What I want in my professional wrestling is actual variety. What I want in my professional wrestling are stuff that gets me engaged personally with that wrestler, with that character. So if one happens to be super duper boring, I have someone else to look forward to. And that should happen throughout the entire card. And you just don't see that in AEW. You don't see it in WWE either, but that's just par course when it comes to WWE. AEW is the one that said that they were going to be the alternative. So that in itself should be the alternative. That should be the alternative. The alternative should be doing what WWE isn't doing to make us engage with the product, so that way, when we actually watch AEW, we have another reason, not a reason, oh man, look at this guy right here. Oh man, that's such a great wrestling match. Let me go check out this wrestling match. That should never be the case. that should never be the case, because now all of professional wrestling is born. There's nothing currently going on at the moment in professional wrestling that's not involving backstage drama. And even then, that right there is starting to die down. There's nothing in professional wrestling, in particular focusing on AEW, because again, I expect this from WWE, that makes me want to tune in to each wrestling programming. Yet you sit here and you smile and you laugh in our faces and tell us that everything is going fine. No, everything is not going fine. Maybe everything is going fine from a physical standpoint. I don't even buy that all too much. I like to see some reports or some numbers that gives off that impression. I don't see that either. What I see as a fan is professional wrestling being stagnant and super duper boring. That's why the numbers are reflected on AEW as you've been seeing for these past couple of weeks. That's why Rampage drew 320,000 fans this week in regards to the viewership number from the Fast Nationals. You see that stuff and you have to ask yourself, wow, what the hell is going on? Because even at wrestling's peak for Sunday Night Heat, they still drew big numbers. It's because the product was solid. What made the product hot? Consistently going out there and doing what no one else is doing in TV land. And in this case for AEW, doing what no wrestling promotion has been doing, period. Because by the time you get to around 1998, around late 98, WWE is already on cruise control in comparison to WCW. And even in cruise control, WCW is still making high enough numbers where they can be somewhat, at least worrisome. They can still be worrisome until you get around 2000, and by that point, they're just completely dead and useless. But it's like AEW is already completely dead and useless on arrival. I want more from my wrestling show. I want more wrestling in regards to the character. Like I said, I like to generalize and encompass everything in regards to professional wrestling. When I talk about wrestling, when I say the word wrestling, I'm not talking about the in-ring action. I will specifically make a distinction and point out the in-ring action. What I care about in my wrestling, when I encompass everything, is everything that is that revolves and is in regards to professional wrestling. The promos, yes, the in-ring work to a certain degree when you know what the hell you're doing and making it realistic and making me want to watch the program to want to see you wrestle. But that comes from the promos, the in-ring action, the pomp and circumstances, the vignettes, the music, the skits that can be done in between. That's what I want to see on my professional wrestling show. I want to see women get involved naked, doing all these other kinds of stuff. And even better nowadays, because I'm much older, and it spites PC culture to a certain degree that maybe they will follow suit, and everything else in the world can, be a little bit mischievous, be a little bit in bad context and bad faith, whatever buzzword you want to use, if you will. Because at the end of the day, it's TV, it's entertainment, it's music. It's not meant to be this I don't even know what you want to say, this broad outlook, this judgmental figure, this almost like godlike presence that is supposed to judge people off of what they're doing. Like, I watch professional wrestling and TV and play video games and all this other stuff to escape life, to escape real life. I don't watch it in order to be reminded that real life exists with all the PC stuff going around. AEW, and again, I'm not going to talk to WWE because WWE already, they're all, get Lord, they're not even WWE anymore. They're like UFC WWE. They're Endeavor. They're a full company into itself that's now a subsidiary. AEW is still private. They can still do these things. You got to make it make sense to me that it's okay to bleed from the face and do all this kind of shit. But it's not okay to have naked girls on television, for an example. It's not okay to do somewhat disturbing storylines. Because, of course, words being uttered have some type of effect on people's psyche or whatever. And apparently that means a lot more than, actual freaking women being naked on television and stuff like that. Half naked, by the way, not even saying full naked. Like, what? I want to know what's more offensive to a parent. Woman wearing bra and panty. Mind you, I'm speaking to AEW, so it's really 18 to 34 or 18 to 59 demographic, 49, whatever the hell freaking word. But I don't care. My point being is, what's more offensive? A woman wearing a bikini or wearing a one piece, or some dude with thumbtacks sticking out of his back, bleeding all over the goddamn place for no goddamn reason every Wednesday? If you're gonna virtue signal, at least do it right. Because right now, in this state of affair, there's nothing going on in professional wrestling, period. And I expected AEW to fill that void when nothing was going on in WWE. Now they're both not doing anything. And it's all because they're afraid of what the world thinks about them. Whereas being the standard bearer and going forward and being what the world should think about you. Overall, based off of the context of what's surrounding your profession. But I guess we're just going to sit here and pretend that everything is all peachy keen, right, Tony? Right? Guys, let me know down in the comment section below how you felt about today's video. Let me know what you would like to see implemented in AEW to make it the actual alternative. Something that we can tune into to break us away from everyday life that doesn't have to do with WWE, because we know they themselves are being directed by whatever team is directly underneath them or whatever HR department tells them what to do. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I don't even focus on WWE. But if AEW is around, they claim themselves to be the alternative, then be the alternative. Or if you're not going to be the alternative, at least, for Christ's sakes, do something different. Professional wrestling is so boring nowadays. And again, I expected AEW to fill that void whenever professional wrestling happened to get stagnant and boring. But instead, they'll just follow the line leader. Oh, we're in second place. Oh, to it! Let me get out of here, guys. Again, comment section down below. Let me know how you felt about today's video. Deuces, P.I.'s.